Greetings, children of the screen, your friendly neighborhood nerds come here once again, and today, after many requests and after quite a few people in my personal life hounding me, I finally got around to checking out Devilman Crybaby, so I thought I would come ahead and share my thoughts with you guys. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. Devilman Crybaby, released in 2018. It is rated TVMA and contains 10 episodes, each coming in at 25 minutes. The series revolves around Akira, who is informed by his friend Rio that a race of demons has returned to take back the world from human beings. To defeat the demons is to incorporate their powers into humanity. Rio suggests that Akira unite with an ancient demon. He succeeds in doing so, and Akira is transformed into the Devilman, possessing the powers of a demon but retaining the soul of a human being. So yeah, guys. There will be a few spoilers in here, but I'll try to save them to the end, and I'll try to point them out before I actually get to them. But first, I just want to talk about my thoughts on the overall piece as it stands. So, in general, I think the series is very good. I don't know if I would say that it's a masterpiece, like some people are saying, but it is very good. So I'm going to go ahead and break it down into the things that I thought worked, and then talk about the things that I thought didn't, as most of the things that I think don't work fall directly within the kind of territory of spoiler land. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, the things that worked for me. The animation in this story really does work for me quite well. I think that the character models are very well designed. They're utilized very well in terms of the story they're doing. They have like a nice balance between something that feels realistic enough that you can invest yourself in the characters. It's not just like a silly cartoon, but there's enough also kind of exaggerations and kind of anime flair that you definitely have an indication of where this might go. Also, the use of color in this series is really interesting, though I will say that it is a super dark series. And of course, I do mean it's dark in content and in tone, but literally the images are very dark. I actually had to reset the color balance and the light balance on my television actually just to see the things that were happening in this show, which is crazy. I've never had to do that with an anime before. When I was first watching it, almost all of it just looked like characters floating in black seas and stuff, which is weird again because everything else looked fine on my TV. I just had to reset it for this one show and then had to set it back afterwards so that everything else didn't look wonky. So keep that in mind when you're going into it. But yeah, the animation itself, obviously, like with any series like this, there are budgetary and time restrictions and stuff like that, so not everything's going to work as well as the creators or us, the audience, would like it to, but in general, all the animation really works. There's a nice mix of kind of smooth, just naturally unfolding stuff, and then kind of a mix of like this weird psychedelic, choppy, like trance-core stuff, and it's really cool. They also do a few things that people might expect from traditional anime and stuff like that, where kind of they do recycle the same, not only just still shots, but also animation cycles. But what I do find interesting in the context of this show is that whereas most shows like Sailor Moon or something like that, it's literally just reusing the same exact footage for like structure purpose, like, you know, okay, like she's gonna transform, she's gonna get her power, so woo, you do the little spinny thing and stuff, and like, ooh, she's Sailor Moon and all this kind of crap. You know, it's not like that in the show. It's more a matter of they use them for artistic reasons. Whenever you go back to a still frame that there's being reused, or when you even go back to an animation cycle that's being reused, it's for a reason. It's like they're perpetuating a theme, or like using it to reiterate a character piece, and at the same time what you'll find is the places in which those images and that those techniques are used are always used in a way that helps stabilize the structure of the particular episode that you're in, as well as add context for the entire series. So while some people might look at those as kind of cheap shortcut things, and I'm sure it did help bring down production costs to a certain extent, I don't think that's why they're doing it. I think they're doing it for story and character reasons, and from that respect, I really, really enjoyed it. The monster designs in the show, also really super cool. Some of them are a little bit silly at times, but in general, they're all really awesome and kind of bizarre, and I love the kind of weird John Carpenter, The Thing meets like 70s psychedelia that they kind of do in some of the sequences with the demons. It's really, really cool and really, really interesting. So in terms of the story and plotting, I also think that that was done pretty well, although I will be honest that there does feel to be a little bit of a pacing issue. However, I will mention that I think a lot of that pacing issue comes from the manga that it is derived from, as from like, I've never actually read the manga. By the way, I have actually ordered in a whatever I can get from Diamond for my local comic shop. I've ordered them in, so I'm definitely going to be checking them out once those volumes come in. Unfortunately, I could only get like 3 volumes out of the entire series, and they're not even concurrent or the beginning of the story, but I'm still going to check it out because it seems really cool and I'm interested. But from people who have read the original manga, they tell me that this is a very faithful adaptation in terms that, like, each episode kind of represents a volume within the story, and just like with the manga, the show, like, the first half of it really feels like more of a kind of like demonic superhero monster of the week type show. Kind of something like a weird blend of, like, I don't even know, like, but yeah, that's the kind of the format that you have, is monster of the week, very heavily. But then, like, as it goes on, they start going into this kind of like post-apocalyptic nuclear war zombie outbreak type. It's none of those things, but that's the kind of tone in the world that they're creating. Basically, they're setting up the apocalypse, and that's whenever the show really takes on more of the kind of the overtones that it's wanting to take. Because really, like, I know that the book was supposed to be, a lot of the book was supposed to be meant as a, like, metaphor for warfare and what that does to people and stuff like that. And within the latter half of the show, that really takes center stage, so it really almost kind of feels like 2 separate shows in terms of tone and pacing. But that doesn't necessarily take anything away from the show. It's just something that's a little bit jarring when you're first going in. Similarly, the show Trigun has the same problem. And with that one, it was because, yeah, like, that show is based off of 2 separate versions of the Trigun manga, one of which was much more comedically focused, and the other one was much more serious. So whenever you put all that together into a series, you get a series that the front half of it is much more comedic and fun, while still setting up the serious themes that will play out later. But then as the show goes on, it kind of drops those more and more and more. So by the time you get to the last disc, you're almost watching a show that feels completely different from the show you started on. And again, those transitions are jarring at times, but I feel that in both Trigun and this show, at the end of the day, it actually ends up working to the benefit of the viewer, because even though it's a little bit jarring, and I know that it'll cause some people to just drop out, if you can stick with it, what you really do end up getting is a subversion of everything, like every expectation that the show has instilled in you up until that point. So yeah, you do get to a certain point where you start figuring out the rhythms and the pacings and how each individual episode's going to flow, and then all of a sudden they just change it out of nowhere. Now, there are a couple other story elements I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to save that for the spoiler section at the end. So next, what I want to talk about is the voice acting in it. So this will obviously sound a little cliche when you're talking about an anime, but the Japanese voice acting is much, much better. A lot of it is kind of in the English translation. Most of the people are really good. They're really solid. Like, nothing was so bad that it totally pulled me out of the experience of the show. If anything, I would say the worst part for me was in the English translation. The gentleman voicing Akira was way too grating, like way too annoying in times. And I know that's actually kind of the point in that, and but I don't feel that it works quite the way that it should. Like, he should be annoying, but it should also kind of funny annoying in places that it's just annoying most of the time. But at the same time, like, even him being annoying did not detract from how into that character's journey that I was. And I should say, for the episodes, and I was trying to burn through them, I did not watch the whole series in the Japanese dub because I was just trying to take it all in. But after watching it, I went back and watched a few select scenes and sequences in the Japanese dub just to kind of see the difference and to see how differently things flowed, because that's one of the other big problems in the American dub, is a lot of the English is still very broken. So there are times where even you have to kind of think about what people are saying a little bit more than you normally would for it to click what they're actually talking about. This only happens in a couple of places, and overall, it doesn't really hurt the show. And in fact, if you're used to watching a lot of anime in American dubs, like, you won't even notice it, I don't think, because it is a pretty good American dub, like an English dub. It's, for what it is, it does a pretty good job. Alright guys, now I'm going to be going into spoilers as I also go into talking about things that did not necessarily work for me within the series. So if you have not watched the show yet and you want to check it out before you get any of these spoilers, then definitely go do that now, and then you can come back and check out the end of the video. Or if you just don't want to hear me bitch about it, then you don't have to. You know, it's up to you. Do as you please. But anyway, spoiler alert. Here we go. So, things that don't work for me, I kind of already talked about the voicing of Akira, and again, that didn't really bother me that much. One of the things that did not work for me on the reverse side, despite the fact that the voice acting was great, is the character of Ryu, or I've heard people say it a couple of different ways, and you know I'm horrible at enunciation. That's why I didn't list the creators of this show, is not because I feel it's not worth mentioning them, but because I would butcher their names so horribly that there's just no point. You can look it up online. They're very talented people. They did some very great work. Anyway, moving on. The character of Rio, again, spoilers, here we go. He's the bad guy. You can tell he's the bad guy from the first frame when he wants to kill a kitten with a frickin' straight, like a box cutter or something, you know? It's very, very clear that he's the villain in this. And our main character is very naive, so it does take him a while to catch on, but, like, they didn't hide that he's the villain at all, which I don't really think was the intent. I think they want you to know he's the villain, because the idea, again, it's like an anti-war thing, and, like, the idea that how evil and wrong it is clearly obvious, and we're all just too naive to see it, or something to that effect. But the real big problem for me is when we get to the reveal that he is Lucifer. He is Satan, like, literally the biblical Satan. Which kind of comes out of nowhere. Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of Christian theology and themes of Christianity and stuff like that worked throughout this, which was really bizarre. Again, I'm not sure if it didn't work for me, but there are definitely times where I'm seeing, like, what looks like a very traditional Japanese family, except for one white dude sitting at, like, their table, and there's, like, a portrait of the Last Supper on the wall behind me. And again, it's like, I know that's a thing that exists in the real world, but it's so uncommon to what you see in general anime that there were times where it definitely pulled me out, where I stopped paying attention to the scene and just started being like, wait, what? And then, like, having to, like, logic it in my head, because it's never really, even though, like, the husband of this family unit is American and white, like, it's never really pointed out that, like, he was a missionary or something like that. Like, anyway, it's never really addressed, because clearly there are other things going on, but I felt that to be pulled me out of it a little bit, and at the same time, it really didn't do enough to set up the idea of Ryu being Satan. Now, again, when they actually get to him being Satan, like, they do a kind of slant or play on the mythology that we know from the Bible, and I actually think that if that were to have been explored a little bit more further, like, that actually could have been a much more interesting take on it, but that's not necessarily what the show was trying to do. So, again, it's like, in general, I like that character, and I think that all the things that they do with him end up working, but I think that the execution of the overall character development and the unrolling of the information about his character and the build-up for his turn could have been a little bit better handled, so that it was a little bit more of a dramatic shift. You know, like, even though we know he's evil, him being Satan should still be, like, a mind-blowing experience, and it's kind of just handed to us like, oh, by the way, he's Satan. Cool, right? Yeah. Other things that didn't work for me in it a little bit, there are times where, as much as I love extreme things, like, this show has got extreme sex, extreme violence, like, extreme everything in it, and, like, that I like that stuff, but there are times in the show where it feels like they're trying to be a little bit too edgelordy, and it also seems like they weren't sure what they could get away with in terms of the sexuality and nudity, so things are not consistent. And again, some of that could be stylized and just a stylistic choice, but I found it really distracting. And it's like, well, if you can't do the thing, or if you're not sure you can do the thing, then either just do it and then have to worry about the consequences later, or just, like, yeah, just pick, plant your feet, make a decision and stick with it. That's what I'm asking from that. And again, guys, there's not actually a whole lot that I have to complain about with this. Like, again, I don't think it was a masterpiece, like some people are saying, but I did really enjoy it. It had a lot of elements of previous anime and previous manga that I've really enjoyed incorporated into it, and I felt that the way that it explored the characters and the themes was really interesting. And I will also say that I probably would have watched this show a little bit sooner if the majority of the people recommending it to me weren't between the ages of 12 and 16. Again, nothing against that age group, but a lot of the animation, and specifically anime, that people within that age group have suggested to me haven't been things that I've necessarily been responsive to. Because again, I love animation, and I love very specific anime. I'm not just an anime guy who will watch any of it. It really has to fit into kind of the things that I want out of storytelling and out of movies. But yeah, and I don't know, again, like, I get why that age group really likes it. It's got heavy sex, it's got heavy drug use, it's got heavy violence, and it is characters who are either around their age or an age that they are approaching, and it does still explore issues of things that are intrinsic to people of that age. So I definitely get why it works for them. And with it being on Netflix, I don't even know how many of these 12-year-olds' parents know that they've been watching this show. Again, not my responsibility, to each parent their own. I make no judgments. If you're fine with your kids watching this, then more power to you. I mean, I watched horrible, horrible horror movies from the time I was like 2 and 3 years old, which is why I'm so messed up today. So, you know, just make your choices and carry on with your life, and everything will be fine, right? So anyway, guys, I really enjoyed this show. All in all, I would say I would give it at least 3.5 out of 5 GGs. Almost 4 GGs, but again, like, I might actually have to watch it again in the Japanese dub to see how I really feel about it and see if I could boost that rating. But in general, I enjoyed it. There's some things that didn't work, but the majority of it really worked for me. But those are just my thoughts. What did you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you like this video, please leave a like and share it with some friends. That's more important now than ever with everything YouTube's been changing up on us small YouTubers. And if you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe and hit that little bell so you can get updates on all the dope content I'll have coming out in the future. Also, guys, if you'd like to follow me on Instagram or Twitter, I will have the links for that in the description below. Once again, thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate y'all watching and spending this time with me. I hope you all have a good one. Nerd Scum, out.